Oh yeah, sexy biscuits. Nice.
Long boys blues, 1975. YouTubers on the rise. Reviewing games late at night and sometimes friends. But Long boys blues, 1975.
Hey YouTube, Longboys Post 1975, and welcome to another Nostalgic Memories of video. In this case, Nostalgic Memories of Batman 89. Now you might be thinking, that's kind of a bit of an odd one, Dave. Well, I can answer that with the same answer I gave to the person I was talking to at work, who'd never seen Batman 1989, to you. But, getting ahead of myself a little bit. You may have seen a few weeks ago, I showed you my Batmobile collection. It was a response to a request, and got the impression that, should have got the impression that quite like Batman. Quite a fan of Batman. And obviously I touched upon how much I liked Michael Keaton as Batman, and, Tim Burton, first Batman movie that he directed, and also Jack Nicholson. So basically, I was talking to a guy at work, and he was going on about how much he liked Batman in the movies, and specifically how much he loved the Nolan trilogy. For the record, I think it's bland. And in fact, The Dark Knight is the greatest comic book movie ever made. It's certainly not one of the greatest movies, period, ever made. It just simply isn't. Taste is subjective, so if you disagree, that's fine. You're just wrong. But I said, so what do you think of Michael Keaton's Batman? And he goes, what? Who? I said, Michael Keaton, Batman, 1989. He goes, oh, I've never seen it. Well, why are you saying you're a massive Batman fan and you've never seen 1989's Batman, Tim Burton's Batman, the original big screen, movie adaptation of Batman? And for the record, you like Justice League, so you're not a massive Batman fan. And I couldn't believe it. And he goes, what's the big deal with Batman 1989? I said, I'm just going to call it Batman from now on. I said, what? The big deal. The big deal. And it's a cliche to say this, but unless you were there, you won't know what a big deal it was. He's, half my age. He's 20 years younger than me. So obviously he wasn't going to be there. He probably wasn't conceived at that point. His loss. But we say that a lot about certain things in life and things, and specifically movies and Star Wars, and when they came out, things like that, unless you were there. But Batman, when it came out, when it was announced to it coming out, to video, to coming onto satellite TV, it essentially remained in the headlines, remained forefront, paramount for 2 years. It was a massive, massive deal. I mean, other movies, the Star Wars trilogy and stuff like that, yes, they've been hyped. Certainly, Star Wars gained most of its sort of, fame afterwards. It wasn't massively hyped. No one knew that was going to be a massive success. But this was just, you couldn't go anywhere, from sort of just into 88 to the launch of Batman without being told something about Batman, hearing stuff about the sets, hearing stuff about the actors, then the directors, then having a mind fart because you're thinking, what, those guys? Again, I'm jumping ahead of myself. There was never anything before it like it. It was a merchandising, marketing behemoth. It was through the roof. It was everyone was scribbling for any information they could get on it to stick it in their form of media. This is pre-internet. It's pretty easy to look up stuff now and find out little tidbits of information here and leak pictures and stuff like that. It wasn't then. It was unbelievable. I mean, 1989 was a big year for movies. Batman, Last Crusade, I think globally Last Crusade beats it. And then Back to the Future 2. When it came to hype and marketing, as big as those other two movies were, they didn't hold a candle to Batman. I mean, its marketing budget, I forget what it was unheard of at the time. The size of its sets were unheard of at the time. Its budget was unheard of at the time. What was it? It's 35 million. In 1989's money. Went on to make 400 plus million globally, but that's unadjusted for inflation nowadays. So I don't even know what that is. But so feel free to correct me. But what I'm trying to say, if you think this is an odd nostalgic memories of, is what I said to this person. First of all, you need to sort your life out and see this movie, and maybe the sequel, but then nothing after that. But this was a whole other time, and it was, yeah, as a kid, to be the primary age for this movie, because it was a movie of uniques and firsts. People forget that when it was reviewed by the BBFC, they said this can't be a PG. This cannot be a PG. It's too dark. It's too violent. But it's certainly not violent enough to be a 15. What do? They introduced a new certification or rating for this movie. They introduced the 12. I mean, now we have a 12A, which I blame, or PG-13 in the States, which I blame for ruining every movie now that, could have been an 18 or a decent horror movie. Looking at you, Die Hard, or Live Free or Die Hard or whatever. But so that was something unique. And then when it came out on video, it had to come out as a 15 because the 12 didn't exist. On video rentals and stuff like that. But the fact that it was a 12, and those who were old enough to go and see it because they followed the hype for a year, you felt special. You felt blessed. That was a big deal. I'm going to see a 12. I'm almost, but not quite, an adult. I was alright. I was 13 because it came out in summer before my birthday, so I would have been 13 in 1989. And I got to see it, but that was a bit down the line. I honestly, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not even my top 10 favourite movies. It's clearly my favourite Batman movie. Michael Keaton is clearly my favourite Batman. Jack Nicholson is my favourite Joker. Again, taste is subjective, but you're wrong. But it's not even my top 10 movies. It's just outside. And it certainly doesn't hold anything to Back to the Future. But I saw Back to the Future 1 on no hype, and Back to the Future 2 it wasn't, it was marketed heavily, but not like this, because you got to remember, when Warner Brothers announced that they were going to make a live-action Batman movie to, debut in the cinemas in summer 1989 and be a darker and grittier representation of the comic book character, people shut their pants. Like, wait, what? Essentially, it created the modern superhero movie. Because, yes, I understand that, you could argue that 1978 Superman, the movie, which is a fantastic movie, created that. But that was a far different sort of movie. That was almost played for laughs and kind of a bit camp, whereas they were going straight out of the park for Batman to be dark, gritty, and violent. Kind of tame by today's standards, kind of tame by some other movies at the time that, at least on video, were 15. But no doubt about it, it was going to be dark and gritty compared to anything we've seen before that, because all we've seen before that, again, the Superman movies were light-hearted and a bit more camp. But much more camp was our only sort of recent recollection, especially for me and a whole generation, and all the magazines and newspapers use this to reference it. Oh my God, how are they going to do this? Because everyone remembers Adam, West and Burt Ward's 60s camp kitsch, Batman. Now you would say, well, you can't compare, even if they, this is 30 years later, you can't think that's how they're going to do it. But that's all people had to go on with Batman and the crap Super Friends cartoons. So, I mean, I grew up watching repeats of the 60s Batman and loved it. But also at this point, while Marvel was my preferred choice of comic manufacturer, Spider-Man, my favourite superhero of all time, never changed. Second-ish, at least first-ish with DC was Batman, because I read detective comics. And loved it. So I was losing my shit on the fact that there was going to be a live action Batman movie and it was going to be taken seriously. But it was that's all we had. That's all we knew. There was no internet. And so, and then the next big announcement that rocked everyone's world in a bad way was they announced it's going to be directed by Tim Burton and it's going to star Michael Keaton. So the only thing even I knew back then was, wait, what? The bloke who directed Beetlejuice with the bloke who was Beetlejuice. Now, don't get me wrong, I love Tim Burton directing that movie and I love Michael Keaton in that movie, and obviously acting is acting, so he's not going to play the character the same way, makeup and stuff like that, but your brain just went, you've cast the Dark Knight, the grumpiest, most, stern, straight-faced vigilante detective with a comedic actor. Alright, what was it, Graveyard Shift or something? Or Night Shift? I can't remember. He's done seriousness movies before that. But everyone, and he got hammering in the press for that. Everyone's just going, Batman's going to be played by this guy, directed by this guy. And the studio and Tim Burton came back with something absolutely fantastic, which is, I want my Batman, He's human. Batman in the comic books is human. He's got no superpowers. So he's a regular guy. That's why he's going to wear the suit, because tiny little images of the suit started to, leak into magazines, into like I can't remember what I was going to say, Starburst, but that's a bloody sweet. You know the one, I can't remember. It's a movie magazine, and then 2018, the comic I read at the time had a tiny, tiny little picture, but they were all dark and grainy. You never really got a feel for what the suit was going to look like, other than it was clearly Batman, and he had the big yellow symbol on his chest. They were being really guarded, about the images from this movie that were coming out. They controlled everything for a year. It was a hype machine, but. And then you get little tidbits of, and pictures of the set, and it was very, gothic, which is, let's be honest, it's Gotham, it should be gothic, that very unique Tim Burton style of visual that we've grown accustomed now. And then other things, it was the biggest sets, motion picture sets since Cleopatra. It was 1/4 mile long. That's even in today's standards. In fact, nowadays, they just bloody green screen it, wouldn't they? They'd have, do a Star Wars Phantom Menace and build it up to the top of Liam Neeson's head and then green screen everything else in. Proper, practical, physical set. There was no CG in this. There was miniatures and stuff like that, but it was a completely and utterly practical effect movie, apart from that bit when Joker, sorry, spoilers, fell off the building at the end. But it was just this cleverly controlled marketing that went on for a whole year up to the launch of this movie, and then that period where it was released in the States in June in some states, and then July generally in July 23rd or something in obviously 1989, and then the gap before it came out in the UK, and so little bits of information you'd see on the sort of MTV. That's what they did back then. Sky Movies, a US top 10 on a Friday night. The fact that it was the highest grossing movie at the time would make the news, not just adult news in this country, where they show you little clips, but the kid news as well. It was unheard of. It was saturating everything. But again, there was no internet, bought any magazine. As I said, it was making its way into the magazines, and I saw that a little bit in 2008. I was desperate to get anything I could on this. I bought every magazine I possibly could, even if I only had a small article or a page or even a poster on Batman. I bought everything on it. I just had to know. I had to know. And then I found out that sort of a month before the movie was coming out, DC were doing a comic book adaptation, and then waiting for that to come out, because obviously nothing had leaked out about this movie, and this was before the US one. So to know the story, and it was a pretty good comic book adaptation as well. I still have the original. It was a US size, but the original UK printing of it. Because I have such strong nostalgia for it. And that waiting for that in itself was just an unbelievable just burden, because I had to know what was going on in this movie. It was, I mean, like I said, I love Back to the Future. It's the best movie of all time, but this whole period of just relentless, Batman's coming, Batman's coming, Batman's coming. In magazines here and there, and everyone trying to one-up themselves, and the newspapers doing stuff and getting tiny little pictures of offset action and stuff like that. And like I said, posters were coming out. And then the reveal of the Tim Burton's Batmobile, the greatest Batmobile ever still to this day. Everything. It was dream marketing by, Warner Bros. And obviously Warner Bros. Knew that everyone was clamoring for a live action Batman movie. It was so easy for them to do this. Like I said, their marketing budget was absolutely huge. And then before the movie came out, there were the infamous Batman. They sold it everywhere. Batman yellow signature shirts, and everyone had them. And we couldn't get one. And my dad found a bloke who was selling hooky ones, and they were exactly the same. But this is how big it was. People bootlegging shit then. Instead of saying DC Comics or Warner Bros. It said copyright choker. It was brilliant, but I just, I soaked it all up. I absorbed it all. I loved it. As much as I was becoming impatient to read the comics, see the movie, this whole build-up, like I said, was unlike nothing ever. And then the figures came out, which weren't particularly good, and the toys, and they weren't, there was not the sheer number of, figures and stuff like that there would have been. Well, to be fair, Star Wars didn't have figures when it first launched in the cinema, and Batman came out before, and also the first range was small, so maybe, I can't compare the range of figures against all three Star Wars movies, but they had a big fat Batmobile. I had the mainstream Batman. They released all the subsequent ones with stupid armour and stuff like that, and they released a Bob figure. Why? But I've got the Batman one. It's beaten up to shit, but I've still got it somewhere. But yeah, so they everything was a controlled release of something, and then the novelization, and then obviously not the novel. You used to get those big books where the top of every page was a picture, and then the bottom was the story, but it wasn't the same sort of detail as a novelization. But I got one for Back to the Future, Ghostbusters. That's two. I don't know why I'm holding up three fingers, but just clever drip, 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 drip here to work it up into a frenzy that clearly played off when it was finally released stateside and in the UK and globally. I mean, you could say that the marketing, because everyone wanted a Batman movie, wrote itself, but it was just absolutely, it was, every kid, like I said, specifically of the age, this movie, 12, was eating up all this stuff. Then there were the stickers, the sticker albums. It was just shirts. What I've just mentioned, the clothing, the hats. Backpacks, anything you could think of. This was just everything. And obviously, Jack Nicholson got paid rather heavily for the movie, but he also took a cut of everything that featured. Was it the Batman '89? Was so not just sales of the VHS, DVD, but the toys or something. I mean, it's considered the most. I mean, I can't quite remember. It's considered the most savvy deal an actor's ever signed for a movie. And technically, he's in the movie longer than Michael Keaton, and you could argue that he steals it from Michael Keaton. I never thought so. I thought Michael Keaton was, Batman was just. He's not going to be as extravagant, was just as good as Jack Nicholson's, but. It started making it onto, like I said, the news when it got released in America, and it was like you saw the lines of people wrapped around, the cinemas and going up blocks and blocks and blocks, and so they made it onto the 6 o'clock news, which is Batman breaks records in America, blah 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 blah, and they obviously mentioned again like the biggest set and stuff like that, and then you get tiny little mini documentary or making ofs on MTV because MTV was really 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 good at that. And then we got to see the trailer for it when Sky Movies one day a week would do the UK cinematic top 10, and then another day they do the US top 10, because back then movies came out in America. This was a big release, so it wasn't so far apart, but movies came out in America sometimes months and months, sometimes not even in the same year, before the UK. So we would sit down, I think it was Thursday night, every Thursday night, and just watch the top 10, even before Batman, but watch the top 10 movies in the US to get just the trailer. And then you finally got to see what Batman looked like, and the Batman like in full, and his suit looked fantastic. It wasn't until you saw the movie that you kind of realised some of the limitations and that it was armour. But in the trailer, and all the stills, his suit, you thought he was ripped. You was like, Jesus, has Michael Keaton worked out? But it wasn't. It was armour, coming back to what Tim Burton said. But we kept watching that every week. And it was killing us. And then obviously the UK release date came round. I want to say it was August. I don't know. It was summer. I can't remember exactly when it came round. But I don't know how my mum did this, because there's three of us and she'd have to come along. And even then, paying for 4 cinema tickets. So, 3 kids, 1 adult, giving everyone food. Must have cost a fortune. So she had to sit there with us, and the day had come. It finally paid off that we could see Batman '89, and it did not disappoint. Sat there with the opening, going, sorry, spoilers if you've not seen this. A, sort your life out. B, what's wrong with you? And C, you really should have by now. I mean, come on. But the whole, you didn't know what the start was, and the dash shut my pants, and the Danny Elfman music, which still to this day is some of the best motion picture music ever. And you realise that it pulled out like a stone version of the Batman symbol, and they took some liberties with the story. This isn't a review, so I'm not going to talk about it heavily. Liberties with the story of Batman, but it starts off with a young Bruce Wayne and Jack Napier. It doesn't. It starts off on the rooftops. I want you to do me a favour. I want to tell all my friends about you, all your friends about me. What are you? That was a bit from the trailer that everyone quoted forever and ever and ever and ever, got completely in it. But it was visually stunning. Even as a 13-year-old, I could see this head and shoulders. What other superhero movies were there other than Superman? And even compared to the cinematics of other non-superhero movies, this was mind-blowing. Dark, visuals, gothic, stunning. Some of the fight choreography, even as a kid, I was like, that was a bit, where's the Jackie Chan? But Batman was never like that in these movies. He was more of an efficient, brutal, takedown guy. But yeah, and seeing the Batmobile and watching Jack Nicholson's performance, I sat there, saw it 3 times in cinema, saw it 3 times. And each time it felt like seeing it the first time. It was amazing. Like I said, it was a combination of visuals, the amazing music, Jack Nicholson's amazing performance, Michael Keaton's performance. Of course, it's underrated. He's not supposed to be flamboyant and over the top as Batman. You could argue that, well, some of the later Batmans have gone wrong. Well, I prefer Michael Keaton, and they play on that whole, it's body armor. He's good at what he does, but he's he's in the top shape, but he's not a friggin' superhero or superpowered or anything like that. I really like that aspect of it. And the whole journey from this year up to finally, and then getting the leaks and watching stuff like what was going on in America and stuff, because it was always like that back then, to seeing it in the cinema and then seeing it 3 times was just, it was amazing. And like I said, it was relevant still. Because it spent a year coming up to this, and then it stayed in cinemas for pretty much like 3-4 months, but then it came out on VHS, because in those days it was 6 months from the release of a cinema movie for it to come out in rental, then another 6 months for you to be able to buy the movie. And like I said, so it came out on it came out on VHS and went bing. Yeah, I'm in the room with the clocks. Let's pretend it's Wayne Manor or something. Pretty sure Bruce Wayne has got clocks. So immediately it went straight back to the top of the charts and became, never lost relevance. And everyone had to see it again. But now we could watch it at home and we could just rewind, watch, keep watching. And it made so much money, as you would expect, on VHS. And then the bit I remember losing my shit on it was because you still have to wait for it to come out. On the sort of the VHS that you could buy at places like Woolworths and things like that. Sometimes, when they would start to take a little bit of hammering these tapes, sometimes everyone knows about this, they did it with DVDs as well. Places would sell off, some of their tapes, because they would pay like £69-89. It would say it on the front, this movie is worth £89 in a sticker, because that's what, you're going to make that much money out of one of these things. Warner Bros. Are going to charge you a shitload of money, before you rent it out and make it back in no time. But so they would sell it ex-rental, like a couple of months before it would come out on VHS. So I bought a copy of Batman 15 certificate, even though it was the exact same print as the cinematic version, for I think £12.99. So you could argue £12.99, like very late 89, very early 1990. Was quite a lot of money, especially if you adjust it for inflation. And then the process began again. I just kept watching it like every day. It was almost like the whole build-up process had infected me. It was like a drug. And like I said, this is the modern superhero movie. There was nothing like it. It was so far above everything else that had been at the time. Again, maybe we were suckered in by the marketing there. It did have this longevity, where you're not just because it was relevant for so long, but you kept watching it. All my mates, when it came out officially, bought it and kept watching it, kept rinsing it, and we still kept buying the merchandising. And even once, it made it to, like Woolworths and that, where you could buy it yourself for like, £9.99. The merchandising was still going strong, It was an experience unlike any other experience, and that's why I had to do this Nostalgic Memories of, because Nostalgic Memories of one video or one movie day, that's not Back to the Future, because nothing had a build-up, nothing was marketed, and nothing had the payoff, quite frankly, even to this day, that Batman did in 1989. Anyway, if you are my age particularly, and you remember this long period of build-up, particularly in like North America, I'd love to know what it was like over there, and you went to it, what rating? It would have been a PG-13, wouldn't it, in North America, because you had the PG-13 created for Temple of Doom. I don't think we had that certification, which begs the question, what certification was Temple of Doom that came out in this country? Never mind, that's for something else. But yeah, if you saw it when it first came out and you remember the build-up, you're of this age group that I was, I would love to know what you think. And did it live up to the hype? As always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you later.